Hello everyone. Why me? Oh Lord, why me? What's there in me that's so special that you so seek to be my friend? Why always stand there outside my door on cold and darkest winter nights? And when day comes drenched and soaked in the morn dew, I know you're there, but I choose not to open. I know you're there, but choose not to see. Such madness in my heart, this thankless heart of mine, of eyes shameless and grateful. So oft the angel whispers in my ear, "Soul, soul, come, look, there he is still, outside your gate, not giving in, hoping you'll open." And how oft too, my sweet and loving Jesus, I said, "Not yet. I'll come to you one day, I promise. I'll run to you, my arms wide open. I'll come to you on my knees, my arms stretched. But don't ask me now, I beg. I have my reasons. I want to enjoy my life for a while yet. Don't ask me now, my sweet and loving Jesus, for my response is still not yet. Not yet." Okay, that's supposed to be a poem. I will tell you, you're probably wondering, what? Okay. Something happened last night. I woke up in the middle of the night with this very clear idea. You know, sometimes these things happen. This very clear idea that I had to tell you about one particular poet and his works. This is going back to the 16th, 17th century. All right. Why this clear idea that I have to share this with you? I was going to do another video and I had it ready and all my notes were ready. I was going to talk about something else completely different, a sort of a follow-up to yesterday's video. And yet I had this thing that no, I had to do something about this poet and his work. I don't know why. I have a feeling that it was because I was reading something else totally different, nothing to do with poetry or anything. And whatever it was, it took me back to one of these poems. I'll introduce the poet, don't worry. That I had to learn as a child, as a young child. I had to learn some of these poems from the golden century of Spanish literature. I had to learn St. John of the Cross. I can still recite a lot of them. And as I was reading this other thing during the day, I thought, oh my goodness, this brings me back to this old poem. What was it? And I started reciting it to myself. Couldn't quite remember the whole of it, so I must have it in my, of course I must have it in my little library here, so of course I have it. So I went and reread these, quite a few poems actually. I just spent an hour reading them. But anyway, then I left it aside and I went back to preparing the video that I was going to do. And then I went to bed and so on, and I woke up with this thing, you know, share this, you know. So I was wide awake. This was about 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and I thought, oh my goodness, what I can't do this now because I can't prepare this now because I have to go back to bed and sleep because I'm teaching at 9 o'clock online, okay? I have to sleep. But I was wide awake and I said, okay, what I'll do is I will prepare it and I will go obviously to the internet and see the translations in English, and that was it. Well, there are no translations in English. It was translated, I don't know, 100, 200 years ago, and the language is still very, very, very rigid, very stilted, thous, and it's sort of an old English kind of thing. And I didn't think that it was a good, it gave you the same feeling as it does in the original Spanish. So I said no. So I continued looking, and I couldn't find it. I don't know. So anyway, I said, oh no, no, please, I cannot start translating this myself. I am a translator. I have translated things, but it's prose and it's literary language, not poetry. Poetry is, you have to be a poet yourself. I don't know what I'm doing, right? Especially with poetry, with the two languages so different, in tonality, in rhythm, in just about everything. You have to be a poet to translate poetry. I said I can't translate poetry, But I couldn't find it, and I had this feeling that I had to share it with you. So I said, okay, what I'll do is translate it, transfer the meaning to you. I'm not intending to write, a poem that will rhyme and everything, just to transfer the meaning of it. Hopefully with a little bit of tonality to it, if I can master a little bit of musicality, but it's not going to rhyme or anything. Okay, so I spent the rest of the night translating 2 or 3 poems. Can you believe that was one of them? But anyway, okay, so I did my best. I am not Shakespeare. Okay, so let me then introduce, and you're going to see why this introduction. The poet, he had a tremendous life. It's just, if only you knew the life he had, it's a very interesting story. Okay, so the name is Lope de Vega. He's the top Spanish poet, the very top. All right. He lived between 1562 and 1635. Actually, his name is long Spanish names, Felix Lope de Vega y Carpio. Okay. Prolific writer. Perhaps I would venture to say that he is the most prolific writer in the whole world. Certainly the most prolific playwright. He wrote for the theater mainly, but he wrote a lot of other things. The reason why I say that he might very well be the most prolific playwright is, if you go back, just a few, okay? Famous names. In classical times, Aristophanes wrote 40 plays. Sophocles 100. Only 7 survive. Euripides managed 92. Menander over 100. Terence 6. Plautus 130. Moving on to his contemporaries, we have, for example, Christopher Marlowe with 7. Thomas Dekker with more than 40, and of course Shakespeare with 38 plays to his name. Moving on again, Molière wrote over 30 plays, Racine managed 12, and in modern times the prolific George Bernard Shaw produced 60 plays. Noel Coward 65, Rattingham 19, Tom Stoppard a creditable 30. So what about our friend Lope de Vega here? Well, by some he is credited with over 2,000 plays. You heard me right, 2,000 plays. 483 of them full-length 3-act plays. Less exuberant estimates say about 1,800. And some of those people with a little bit of a mean streak in them say only 1,500. In any case, either way, it is an output of volume that really earns him the title of the most prolific. He lived to an old age, well into his 70s, and continued to write until the end. Even late in his last years, he was said to be producing 2 new plays each week. It's amazing. To feed theater managers and their audiences at the chorales. Now, I don't know whether you know the chorales were okay. The word choral in Spanish, corral with a double R. The actual meaning of the word is a hen's scoop, a den. Yeah. But of course, we use it in different ways. It is used in English too, as being in an enclosure. Okay. Now, what happened was that the way houses were built. We're talking about Madrid here. The way houses were built were around, sort of, and there was a patio in the middle of all these houses, around the big patio, okay? And there you had, a garden and perhaps a tree, and the houses were around. So, and that is where the theater plays took place. Some were bigger than others. Some of them were huge, actually. And that is where people came. They only had to close the door behind them and get a chair and bring a drink, and that was it. There they were, right outside their home, right there by the door. And they would perform these plays. And so he wrote continuously for this kind of audience. So he wrote in a very, very popular manner in the using ordinary words. At that time, he broke. Actually, he started a new type of theater, because at the time poetry and theater was very using words, very grandiloquent, high-sounding words, and that was considered to be great literature. He broke that pattern and he wrote for the audience. He had tremendous respect for the audience, and he wrote for the audience so that the audience could understand what he was talking about. So during this time, he was writing theater plays for the chorales. He also wrote, in addition to those, let's say 1,500, if you like, okay, the minimum, okay. But on top of that, he also wrote novels, short stories, narrative, verse, and poems, of which some 1,600, yes, 1,600 were sonnets. He also wrote tracts on religion later on in his life, amazing story. An essay on theatrical practice. We have them in manuscript and published form. And amazingly, the quality of his work, for one so prolific, is actually consistently high. Let me tell you about his life. His life. Oh my goodness. If ever there was a sinner par excellence, that was Lope. I mean, in terms of sinner, biblical sinner, sort of, Mary Magdalene kind of sinner. You know, he had such a life that he was so disordered. He married, I think 2 or 3 times, but that didn't stop him. He had lovers everywhere, practically in every town. He had, and one day he would run away with, he would have one mistress and then run away with another and then get some married lady and have children with all of them. I think he had 16 children altogether, some of them in wedlock, but others out of wedlock. Oh my goodness. He was so popular. He was popular very, very young, so he was he was a rock star, as it were. He was so gifted with language that in some biographies we are told that at the age of 5 he was writing verse already, and he had already mastered Latin, and I don't know, but in his 20s, he was already very famous, and people just flocked to see his plays. Very interesting. Anyway, so he was it. All right. There were other poets. One of them was Luis Gongora. They were competing between the two. Lope is going to have a conversion of the heart. You heard the first poem, yeah? But at this time, no, he's enjoying himself. He's having a great life. Gongora was a very artistic, grandiloquent kind of poet. And he considered that the way Lope wrote was really not good enough. I mean, all those ordinary words, And he would write things about him, sort of just putting him down with disdain. Okay, he didn't consider him a real poet. And at one time, he wrote a little sonnet. And just to put salt in the wound, he wrote it in Lope's style, with ordinary words, popular kind of sonnet. And he touched the nerve because he said he was laughing at his life, at his disordered life, as he called it. And he said, "Oh my goodness, he used to marry women here and there, and he used to have lovers everywhere, fall in love with this woman's beauty and the other woman's virtue and the other woman's whatever, and now, my goodness, he's married meat and fish. Meat and fish. Why meat and fish? Because he married a woman whose father was a very rich man, but he was a trader. He had the equivalent of a chain, chain stores everywhere. And he sold meat and fish. But he had a lot of money. And that touched the nerve, probably because he was half right, okay? And he said, and now he practically stooped down to marrying meat and fish. Lope, he didn't take that kindly. It touched the nerve. And he wrote back another sonnet for him, for Gongora. And he went for him, trying to touch Gongora's nerve there, because he had one. And he wrote it in his Gongora's grandiloquent style, which wasn't his thing at all. And Gongora's soft spot in the Spain of the time was that he was Jewish. And you know that the Spanish Jews were Sephardic Jews. Okay, so they were Jews by religion and by race. They were not Ashkenazi Jews, you know, from Eastern Europe, who, you know, this tribe converted to Judaism, but they were really from Eastern Europe people. Sephardic Jews were both, you know, in religion and in race Jewish. So at that time, you could see very well who was Jewish just by the physical appearance. Nothing wrong with that in the sense that, you know, as we can see someone who is Chinese or Asian because of the shape of the eyes, or someone from sub-Saharan Africa because of the color of the skin, or someone from Northern Europe because they're blonde and blue-eyed, whatever. A Jewish person was recognizable. And so he wrote a really mean sonnet to him. And imitating his style, he wrote an ode. Ode to a nose, he said. A nose, not a nose or noise, no. An ode to a nose. And imitating his style, he said, once there was a man attached to a nose. He was trying, obviously, mockery, yeah. A magnificent nose, a superlative protuberance, nose without end, amen, a nose forever, a pyramid of Egypt, and he went on and on about this noise. Okay, so what happened to him? He led this life, la vida loca, and then he started to have a sort of a conversion of some kind. He fought it. He fought it for as long as he could. Didn't want to know, but he was becoming aware. And so I will read you again the first one, and then I'll read you another one. When he's still fighting to that call to change his life. Okay, so the first one, perhaps it will make more sense now, was, let me see, why me, O Lord? What's there in me that's so special that you so seek me to be your friend? Why always stand there outside my door on cold and darkest winter nights? And when day comes, still there, drenched and soaked in the morn's dew. I know you're there, but I choose not to open. I know you're there, but choose not to see. Such madness in my heart, this thankless heart of mine, of eyes shameless, ungrateful. So oft the angel whispers in my ear, soul, soul, come, look. There he is still, outside your gate, not giving in, hoping you'll open. And how oft too, my sweet and loving Jesus, I said, not yet. I'll come to you one day, I promise. I'll run to you, my arms wide open. I'll come to you one day on my knees, my arms stretched. But don't ask me now, I beg. I have my reasons. I want to enjoy my life for a while yet. Don't ask me now, my sweet and loving Jesus, for my response is still, not yet, not yet. And so he's having this conversion, okay, being aware of his life, fighting it. Here is another one. That's the only other one I have. These are sonnets that he wrote for himself. He was just giving expression, obviously, to what he was feeling. O shepherd, whose sweet whistling awoke me from my slumber deep. Shepherd, shepherd who turned his dying cross into a shepherd's staff. With your eyes tender, see now my feeble faith. Hear me, shepherd. Hear me now. Don't turn your loving gaze away from my abhorrent sins. Shepherd who died for his offending and insulting flock, I hear you. I'm coming to you now. Wait for me. Wait, wait. But what is this I'm saying? Wait? But you have been waiting, there, nailed to a cross by hands and feet. He's repenting, you know. Well, guess what he did afterwards with all this? He was a widow for a second time or a third, I don't know, you lose track with Lope. And then he goes and wants to become a priest and give the theater up, give everything up and become a priest. He has 16 children all over Spain. But he's a widower, so he becomes a priest, he becomes a Franciscan. Well, he is the laughing stock of Madrid, because of course no one believes. What do you mean, Lope? A priest? And everyone was laughing. They thought that he was just playing a trick and a prank on all of them. And the idea was, well, he tried everything else. The only thing that he never tried was being a priest. So I suppose that now, well, that's the only thing left. So, but it seems to me from his, that he had a change, he had a conversion. Anyway, he became a priest, gave up the theater, always a terrible temptation there, but gave it up. Continued to write his he called it Rimas Sacras, sacred rhymes, sacred poetry, this religious poetry. Yeah, he said the first mass in a convent where one of his daughters, Marcela, was there as a cloistered nun. And there he chose to celebrate his first mass. And he did. And later he wrote as a priest the most beautiful, I think sincere. It is sincere, from the heart. And I didn't have time to translate anymore, kind of a translation, as you saw. But he was aware of all the time, even as a priest, that there was this thing inside him, this temptation, pulling him back to go to the theater and to go to that life of, riches and applause and admiration. And he knew he was weak. And he didn't want to try doing it. He had these ideas, well, perhaps if I only do it once, just one little play. But he knew himself well enough to say, if I do one, that's it. It's like an alcoholic, that's it. I'll just continue. And in one of them that I haven't translated, but he says things like in his poetry, he prays to God, to Jesus. He says, please keep holding me in your hands. I mean, the man, his soul is crying practically, please keep holding on. Hold me in your hands. Don't loosen your grip, because if you loosen your grip, you know what is going to happen. I know what is going to happen, and certainly you do too. So keep holding me in your hands, O Lord. Keep holding me in your hands, because, if only because, for one brief moment, I held you as a priest in mine. It's beautiful poetry, let me tell you. Okay, so I think that's it. I don't have any more. I did the best I could, okay? But I hope you enjoyed this. This is a sinner who comes back to God. And I thought for a moment, okay, so what title am I going to give this video? Lope de Vega sonnet? No one will see it. So then the thought came to me, just like that, a prayer for Europe, a prayer for the West, a prayer for the West. That is what I'm going to title it. Anyway, I leave you. Thank you for your attention. I'll see you again tomorrow or the day after. Bye-bye.